Welcome to the Cabrera Lab Podcast.
Hey.
What's up?
I'm excited to be back here.
Yeah.
We haven't been in here for a little bit.
I know,
We've been traveling. Yeah, but that's good. Meeting people, talking things through, doing systems thinking with everybody.
Miles on.
Okay, so here's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Part of this came from our trip, talking to people. There are a lot of things that people, kind of like inside conversations or, in emails, they ask us to sort of help them think them through.
Yes.
Little, like daily problems or work problems or parenting problems. So Personal. I've been collecting them, thinking, I know it's a little nerdy.
Collecting problems.
No, but
most people collect stamps.
No, most people
You're
don't.
collecting, or baseball cards or like coins or something.
I'm not collecting problems.
You have like a little
problem
shelf.
No. I care about helping people think everyday things through.
Yeah.
Personal things. And so I've been kind of keeping track of different things that people ask because I think this is a venue by which a lot of them are sort of common. Yeah. And if we talk them through here.
And do you have one?
I have a bunch.
Oh, you have a bunch.
One problem that people have been talking to us about is teenagers.
Oh, yeah.
Because teenagers are problematic. They're wonderful, but they're problematic.
Yeah.
I'm going to read a scenario to you, and then we're going to talk it through.
Map it.
All right. A parent and their teenage son both see driving as a milestone, but in totally different ways. The teen sees it as independence and freedom, and the parent sees danger, responsibility, and a lot of risk. So their conversations around driving constantly end in frustration. So the question is, how do we help both the parent and the teen sort of build a shared mental model, see each other's mental models, change their thinking together?
What was the end part? Is they're frustrated?
They're frustrated. They're both frustrated.
Conversations or something?
Yeah. So how do we solve for that?
I mean, the first thing, we can make this like red, Mm-hmm. So the teen sees it as like independence and freedom, and the parent sees it as we'll make the parent green. Parent sees it as risk and danger. So they're looking at driving just differently. Mm-hmm. And because they're looking at it differently, driving has, different parts to it, right? So they're just seeing driving. When the parent sees driving, they see risk and danger. And when the teen sees driving, they see independence and freedom. And so they're just completely not connecting because they're describing the same thing, driving. Mm-hmm. Disconnecting on how they define that, like the mental model of driving.
Right.
And so that would lead to, frustrating conversations.
So then the question is, first you have to realize that you have two different mental models at play, right?
What always makes it difficult is when we're talking about the same thing but defining it quite differently, right? So the parts for the teen are these parts, and the parts for the parent are these parts. Right, so we have driving 1 and driving 2, mm-hmm. and that can help distinguish that when we say driving, we're really talking about two different drivings. There's the parent's version of driving, and then there's the teen's version of driving.
Right,
and that's creating a lot of the frustrating conversations because if I have something that's like dear to me and you're criticizing it, mm-hmm. and I'm like, what's to criticize about this little guy? Mm-hmm. He's cute, or mm-hmm. whatever.
Yeah.
Then you're going to be defending your version of it.
Yeah.
So making that distinction is really important.
Yes, and practically speaking, first of all, you have to recognize that there's a difference. Same word, but you are thinking something different than the other person, right? And then you have to have, to sort of articulate that. Yes. Bring it to the surface.
Bring it to the surface so that you can talk about it in those ways. So you can talk about, driving 1 is amazing. Mm-hmm. I remember when I got my license, it was like freedom.
Yes.
It was like for the first time in my life, I had, I mean, it was before that because we had like mopeds and stuff like that. But, when you get a bike, when you get a moped, when you get a car, you get different degrees of freedom.
Yeah.
And for a teen, that's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
Because it's, a big part of what they're going through is establishing independence or quasi-independence. And so that's a really huge deal to a teen.
Right.
At the same time, to a parent, they've lived longer, they've seen terrible things happen, and so they're like,
Yeah.
you're going 65 miles an hour. Humans aren't supposed to go that fast. Our
Right.
bodies aren't really made for that. It's dangerous. And then you've got phones and other drivers on phones and,
Drunk driving.
And, there's just so many different risks. And on top of that, the teen brain doesn't register a lot of those risks for a bunch of different evolutionary reasons. But I think you've got to start with, we're not talking about the same thing. We're talking about two things. Mm-hmm. And so if we want to talk about driving one, we can talk about driving one and how amazing it is, because it is totally amazing, And if you want to talk about driving two, we can talk about that too. That's the first step in distinguishing between what are we actually talking about.
Right. And then is there room for building a new mental model that is, say, driving three, that has takes into account both perspectives? I mean, I know, like, with our own children, and most recently our son, they're sort of freedoms, but they're within some guardrails that allow for us to feel comfortable in this space, but him to feel comfortable in that space.
Yeah, because if you don't distinguish between driving 1, 2, and 3, then what ends up happening is when I talk about this, it looks like it's in conflict with this.
Right.
And then it's also in conflict with this. And so now if I'm the son and I'm kind of pushing this agenda, then I'm like, oh, I have to defend these things against this. I have to defend these things against this. But driving 3, which is actually this one up top, the whole.
Right.
The whole has two parts. It's got driving 1 and driving 2 in it. And driving 1 and driving 2 can coexist. They don't have to cancel each other out.
Right. In other words, one doesn't have to win.
One doesn't have to win. And so the reason we're in a frustrating conversation is because it feels like if you don't see this, if you don't see that there's driving 1, driving 2, and driving 3, then you don't see that one doesn't cancel the other out. They just they can all exist. Driving can be freedom, driving can be independence, driving can be risky and dangerous and all kinds of things. So we can have a conversation about driving 3 that includes driving 1 and 2. This is very similar to George Foreman, the famous boxer.
Yeah.
He named all 5 of his kids George.
Yeah.
And
because why not?
Because why not? He's George Foreman. And so you say, well, that must be really confusing inside the household if you say, hey, George, 5 kids come running plus George himself. And how do you solve that? Right?
Yeah.
Well, it turns out that in practice, like in theory, they're all named George, but in practice, they're George 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah.
Well, that's the same thing.
Right.
Like, they're all George, but they're not all the same thing.
Right.
They're not all the same person. And so that we need labels to be able to identify them.
Distinguish them. Yeah.
And naturally, we just make those labels, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 in the Foreman case. But it's the same thing here. I mean, you can call it whatever you want to call it, but numbers are easy to use. So driving 1, driving 2, and driving 3. Driving 3 contains driving 1 and 2. And
Which
then
reconciles the two perspectives.
And that's the beginning of the conversation. So now we can say, let's talk about driving 1 for a second. So I would not start with driving 2 if I was the parent. I would start with driving 1. Driving 1 is awesome.
Yeah. We've all experienced
it. And now the kid's like, oh, okay, she gets me, He's talking my language, it's amazing.
He feels
seen.
Heard. Yeah.
Yep. And all of those things can be on the table, right?
Yeah.
And if you build it with blocks or cards or whatever, you can sit. They're literally on the table. Those things are on the table.
Yeah, these parts.
Independence, freedom, awesomeness. A place to store all my gear. For whatever sport I'm in and whatever I'm going to next, and all that kind of stuff. Identity, all kinds of things go with that, and that kid is interested in. Okay, all of those things are on the table, but also on the table is driving too, which is all these things, or whatever you want to use.
We have more of these.
We have those, or you can use almonds, like whatever you have available. Get them on the table so the kid sees, these things are on the table, and these things are on the table.
Right.
Everything's on the table, and when it's on the table, then you're going to have a less frustrating conversation, because if I say something or my son says something, you can go, oh, you're talking about driving 1.
Right.
I totally agree with that. On the other hand, if we're talking about driving 2, that comes with some risks. That comes with some dangers, right?
Yeah.
It sounds very simple, but it's a part-whole structure with distinctions and perspectives. And if you don't have those distinctions, if you don't see those perspectives, and you don't see that part-whole structure, then you're going to have frustrating conversations.
One of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation with you is I think it's important. I don't know that people generally would try to discern or uncover the structure of the conversation.
That's where it's at.
Right. And so I think when you want to think things through, when we say think it through, we actually mean see the structure of the mental models that are in play at that moment and interrogate them a little bit.
Yeah, because if you don't see these red things, these conflicting relationships that are implied,
right,
when you're in that conversation that doesn't see the perspective, doesn't see the difference, the distinction, doesn't see the part-whole structure,
right,
and doesn't see these conflicting relationships, those conflicting relationships are the thing that's leading to the frustration. The fact that one person believes that if I let this thing stand, it will annihilate this thing.
Right.
If I take your point on these two things, then it's going to decrease my point on the points I'm making.
Right.
But if you can see, hey, those things can exist and these things can exist on the same table,
we can all get along.
Then, well, it doesn't mean that there's not going to be some conflict or whatever, but you'll actually find the conflict together, rather than have it be totally unseen, implied, manufactured. This is manufactured conflict that isn't explicit.
Right.
And so we're creating frustration based on things that aren't actually true. Well, if there's frustration to be had, let's at least base it on some conflicts that are true,
real,
right? Let's say something real.
Right.
Right? So there's going to be limits to independence. There's going to be limits to freedom as a result of risk and danger. And there's real limits there. But that doesn't mean there can't be independence and freedom and risk and danger.
Right.
Those things can coexist.
Right, and the problem is most of us stay at the surface level and we just argue the content of the points, and we don't stop and say, wait a minute, maybe you and I are saying the same thing, but we mean something different. Let's stop.
Yes.
Let's think about that. Let's talk about that. And the thing that's amazing is when you get these things to the surface, like come below the surface to see the mental models, then there's room for agreement, and there's a way to see what the crux of the inconsistency or conflict is.
Yeah, and conversations that are incredibly frustrating and take sometimes 30 minutes or several hours in some cases can be had in minutes.
Yes.
Because you're like, oh yeah, we're on the same page. Like, of course. And your teenager understands these things. If they respect you and they respect your parenting, they know that you're protecting them. They know that you're taking care of them. They also know that what they like, and they want what they like. Right.
But also if you have their perspective on the table, then they're more willing to hear your perspective. And then there's that room for understanding.
Not only their perspective, but that this is also in your perspective, right? Yes. Like you see the value of driving. Mm-hmm. You see the value of having a car. You see the value of being able to go someplace on the weekend and whatever. you're not seeing that value. Right. You've experienced that value for longer than they have.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
So you're not seeing that value. You're just hyper aware, sometimes for the first time, sometimes highlighted, whatever, of these new things, these new concerns. And so you're trying to get across those. And really what we need is to have a conversation about these so that your team hears that you hear it.
Yeah.
And then that opens up a conversation about these so that your team can be more aware. Because really all you want, unless your goal is to just shut them down, which isn't great for the team, so I doubt that's the goal.
No.
Then, really what you want is your team to be aware of the risks, aware of the dangers.
Well, and that's our job as parents, is to slowly release them out into the world with some of the guardrails that they need to stay alive and progress and eventually become independent of us.
My mother always said, we just got to get you to 21. That's my job, alive. Like, if I can get you to 21 alive, your brain will catch up with your development, and you probably be okay from there.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. This episode is brought to you by STSI, the Systems Thinking Standards Institute.
Yes, super excited to work with STSI, raising the standard for 8 billion systems thinkers, science-based standards, training, the professional systems thinking credential, accreditation for organizations, the systems thinking or thinker toolkit. And so I really encourage folks to go to stsi.pro, take the trainings, get the credentials, get your organization accredited, get the toolkit. Yeah. It's good stuff.
Help us get to 8 billion.
And it's a 501c3 nonprofit.
Don't forget that.
It's a great partner.
Okay. Here's another one that comes up a lot that we've actually talked about. Actually, we talked a lot in our last road trip. We were talking to each other about it. This idea of conflicting cultures inside of organizations.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm just going to, as I frame it, so employees are told one thing, like take initiative. But when someone takes initiative and fails, then they're sort of punished or sanctioned for it, criticized. And then others are told, speak up in meetings around projects. But sometimes the most vocal people are sort of slowly taken off of projects over time, right? And so there's these sort of mixed signals between what's said and what's done inside of the workplace, which means that people sort of are paralyzed. They don't know, damned if they do, damned if they don't kind of thing, right? Yeah. So the question is, how do you have that balance, right? How do you reconcile behavior that's not matching the words, especially in a professional situation, because obviously it's your livelihood and you want to do well.
This is a tough one because most people that we work with have a misunderstanding of what culture is. So culture is very simply defined as mental models shared by the agents. So the agents are the employees or the people of the company or whatever it is that you're in part of, right?
Mm-hmm. So can we give an example of that? So you're saying everybody in the organization has the same mental model about something, and that's part of their culture. So, for example, customers are right or customers first. That's a mental model that's shared?
Yes. So that's what a mental model shared means, that everybody or some set of buddies have the same mental model of the thing.
Okay.
Right? Where the problem lies is in percentages.
Okay.
Right? So if you think of the whole organization as 100%, there's no mental models are going to be shared 100%, right?
Right.
And so what you want to think about is think of a mental model like your vision maybe is one of the ones that you're going to share a lot. You're going to try to share a lot. Maybe let's say 80% of your organization, and this would be like an amazing organization, share the same mental model of vision.
Right.
But then there's tons of other mental models. There could be dozens or hundreds of mental models that are traded in culture. And some of them are believed by certain segments of the population, and some of them are believed by others, and all by percentages.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So what we have to think about is that these things are not either or. They're percentage.
Right. The degree to which they're
shared.
Right.
And then if you translate this whole big bucket of the degree to which various mental models are shared or not shared, translate that to a boat, and just the degree to which they're shared is the degree to which people are paddling in the same direction. And the degree to which they're not shared is the degree to which they're paddling in different directions. So you can imagine if you have a boat of 100 people and 80 of them are paddling in the same direction, that boat is going to go in that direction. Even if 20 of them are paddling in completely different directions or not paddling at all or whatever. And that's how culture works.
Right.
Right? What's happening in this example is you've got like little mental models that different employees have heard and adopted.
Right.
That leadership maybe have said or whatever. And different sets of employees are in that boat, as groups that are paddling in the same direction. But then other groups of employees are paddling in different directions. And that's your boat.
And then there's a conflict. And often these two things directly conflict.
Sometimes they directly conflict, and sometimes they just, indirectly conflict, and they just muddy the waters, and you go in circles, or you kind of, serpentine or whatever, right? And sometimes they just are at complete odds with each other. So what's beautiful about this example is reality is always giving you feedback.
Yes.
And that's why I wore my Love and Reality shirt today.
Yeah.
So reality is always giving you feedback, always, because reality is existing and that existence is just feeding back, right? And so reality is telling you as a leader exactly what you need to do if we're listening.
Yeah.
And in this case, you have a bunch of conflicting mental models so for the first thing is there's groups that are following this one and there's groups that are following this one. Well, if you can pick between them, then that would be a good thing.
Right.
And then try to spread that mental model. And there's all kinds of ways you can build culture, which I don't want to go into right now.
Well, that's another episode.
That's a whole episode. But the other thing you got to think about is whatever rule or mental model that the organization has, right? Whatever little mental model that these people share, right? So this is like a mental model.
So, you think sometimes these things are in conflict. Like I know, as you know, I'm a shopper.
Yes.
I know that, for example, if I buy something, I have 30 days to return it.
Yeah.
Right. And I know there are times when I go in at 32 days, and because the store knows me,
they give it to you.
They'll violate it.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
But they technically shouldn't, because they have two things, right?
Yeah. So they have a rule. Let's say they have a rule which is 30 days. You have 30 days to return. Right. But then they have another principle.
Yes.
Which is customer first.
Yes. Because this is a financial thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do here is have these things are a little bit in conflict, right? And so that you've got a person at the counter and you've got a customer coming in with bags of stuff to return. And let's say this person is like a repeat offender of buying things, using them, and returning them under the 30 days. So it's under 30 days and you get the return.
Yes.
And this person is a repeat customer, loyal, blah, 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 and it's over 30 days and no return.
Right.
Right?
Not a good business model.
if you're a manager or a leader, you're looking at both these situations and you're going, right? And yet this employee is following this rule and this employee is following that rule. And so what we have is kind of dumb rules. We have rules that are not sophisticated enough to deal with the complexity of the situation. The rules are relatively dumb compared to the complexity that needs to be managed. And so what we need to do is kind of balance these rules, right? We want these employees to think in balance.
I see.
And we're not communicating that in our culture because what we're essentially doing is like 30% of our employees believe, have this mental model, and another 30% have this mental model, and the final 40% don't have a mental model. They're just doing whatever they do.
Yeah.
And this leadership is getting frustrated no matter what the people do.
Yeah.
So in this particular example, reality is giving you all that feedback, and it's telling you that your mental models are conflicting. They're dumb, literally. They're sophistication-wise, they are not up to the sophistication of the complexity that people are dealing with.
Yeah.
They're not clear enough. They're in conflict. So we have to spend our leadership time on, let's get a clear, smart mental model, and let's get it across the entire organization.
Yeah, and when you say it's a dumb mental model, I think what you're saying is these two things which actually end up in conflict are not meeting the reality of how you need to deal with people, your customers in the business. Is that what you're saying? It's dumb because it's mismatched?
It's dumb because what I mean by, I don't mean dumb, the level of sophistication of this rule does not meet the level of complexity of these situations.
In reality. I see. Yeah,
right?
That's what I thought.
It's a simple binary black and white rule, but reality is a little more complex than that.
Right.
As a leader, as a CEO, if somebody's coming in and abusing our system, and the employees know it, they and the CEO wants to say, you know what, maybe
let's have
you're not even our customer.
Right.
You're not actually our customer. Even though you're buying things and returning them, you're technically not really our customer. You're just using, you're taking advantage of the system.
Right. So then go back to that. You were saying that they have to balance it.
Right. So what we want to do is, we have a 30-day return policy, but if it's a customer that's a great customer, like you're going to lose, you're going to get them upset or feeling unfair when they buy everything and they have 5 kids and they're buying everything from the store, it's like, whatever, give it to them. Of course,
right. It's not going to hurt your business.
It's not going to hurt your business at all.
It's going to help your business.
It's going to help your business. You're going to get more loyalty in that customer. But that's a gray zone, which means it's in the balance, not in the two rules that we're trying to balance.
Right. So in that case, you're saying this manager, the CEO, has to communicate a more sophisticated rule that allows for a little bit of adaptation to the situation.
A lot of it. You want these employees to adapt. That's your strongest. That's your strongest thing. But what we're trying to do is come up with inviolable black and white rules that the employees are gonna they're not even gonna know all the rules. They're not gonna share all the rules, and B, there's gonna be situations that kind of repel or challenge the black and whiteness of the rule.
Right.
So we want our employees thinking. That's why this manager, because they're thinking and they're seeing the whole big picture, and they're sort of saying, boy, I would have said yes to this one and no to this one,
Right.
And yet we did it exactly the opposite.
Right. And what's interesting about this situation too is these two people are trying and are frustrated and demotivated because they're going to get in trouble for applying what they perceive to be the rule or the principle.
Totally.
And this one is going to get in trouble because their numbers are going to be off. So the CEO is going to be like, why is your store doing? Yeah. So it goes through the whole system.
Exactly.
This conflict.
So what we want to do is very carefully pick the mental models that we want out there and then embed them in culture. And
how do you embed them in culture?
Like I said, we could do a whole episode. I think we've done some episodes on that. But there's a whole thing called the culture building graph. Right. It's basically, in a nutshell, if you think about how companies market to us, well, when a company markets to you, they're not marketing their product. They're marketing ideas. They're trying to get you to change your mind, change your thinking on their product. But they're not marketing their product.
Right.
Does that make sense? Because you're not seeing their product. You're watching TV or you're watching the internet. The product is a physical thing.
Right.
They're throwing ideas at you.
Right.
Right. They're trying to say, their product is going to help you with this. And they're trying to convince you of that idea. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So there's all kinds of marketing that goes into that. And a lot of it is just repetition that you hear at a bunch of places, you hear from your friends, you hear that it's useful, all that kind of stuff. So all of those techniques that are happening externally for product can happen internally for mental models that build culture.
I see.
So we call that a culture campaign. It's basically an internal marketing campaign where you get your agents to build the mental model of the vision, of the mission, so that they understand where we're going and how to get there, and whatever other mental models that you deem are important as leadership to get across. And so when you notice that when you see this problem and you see that, these two mental models are in conflict with each other, and some people are choosing one and some people are choosing the other because they're in conflict, and so we have a boat that's being rowed in multiple directions, then leadership really has to focus on, let's come up with a concept, a mental model that is clear and that governs the actual complexity of what these folks are dealing with, that's going to be a helpful tool to them.
Right.
And then let's make a culture campaign around that. So
this new mental model is the one that has to be really marketed internally so that everybody shares that mental model, becomes a part of your culture. What's also interesting is, as you were talking, it occurred to me that leaders could take away, if you're seeing behaviors or outcomes in your organization that you don't like, the chances are you can trace it back to a faulty mental model, a 100%. Conflicting mental model.
Chances are, for sure.
It is
100% that those behaviors are coming from mental models.
Right. So if you notice, 30% of the time you're having this outcome, and 30% of the time, you need to take the time to say, what is this group of agents' mental model that's causing them to behave this way?
Yes.
And then that allows you to see
exactly
the replacement.
Yeah, I mean,
the
introduction of an understanding of mental models will completely change the way organizations work, because all the behaviors you like are being driven by certain mental models, and all the behaviors you don't like are being driven by other mental models. And you have to be able to get the feedback from reality to see that, right? And then shift the mental models.
Right.
And have a system for shifting mental models, just like we have marketing systems.
Yeah.
If you have 20 employees, then a lot of it is just talking to 20 employees. If you have 5,000 employees, then it's a more sophisticated apparatus, but it's basically the same thing.
Well, what's interesting is if you think about this example and the driving example, the key to it is that underlying set of mental models, seeing the structure of how people are thinking about things, as a way to build new shared mental model. Like, this is a new shared mental model that needs to be built. Just like D3, driving 3 is a shared mental model.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, if you think about the tools that we're using to do this are actually quite simple. There's the love reality loop, which is, there's reality and there's your mental model, and there's the feedback between them. There's M equals IO, which is the mental model is equal to the information and the organization of it. Organization is made up of DSRP, and those are the structures that we're talking about: part, whole, distinctions, perspectives, relationships.
Right.
And there's the 6 moves are kind of an easy version of DSRP that we use all the time, like part, party, and is not.
Right.
This is everything you need to solve any of these problems. This is your tool set.
Right.
To solve whatever kind of problem that you want to solve.
Yes, and I also think the important thing across these 2 examples is, if you stay at the informational level of somebody's mental model,
you will lose.
You will not be able to find.
You will lose.
Well, essentially, you won't find common ground because you're not understanding how they're thinking about something, how they're understanding.
Yeah, because to go back to our driving example, the teen is saying driving is cool or whatever, freedom.
Yeah.
And you're saying driving is dangerous. Okay, well, at the informational level, they conflict.
Right.
So if he keeps saying driving is cool and independence, and you keep saying driving is dangerous, well, you're going to be in that conversation loop forever.
Right.
Because you're just at the information level. But if you then get to, there's a mental model that's driving this perspective, and there's a mental model that's driving this perspective, and we can actually, if we understand the underlying structure of those mental models, we can build both mental models and build a new mental model that contains both of them. And we can actually have a conversation like that. And by the way, that's the exact same thing that's happening here structurally.
Yes.
There's two different conversations going on that are in conflict with each other. And we can build a new conversation that finds a common ground between them.
Yes.
And gets people to change their behavior.
Yes,
just like we want our child to change their behavior. We don't want them to stop driving per se.
Well,
we want them to
not really.
We want them to be more aware, more metacognitive, more aware of the things that could happen.
Yes.
And be weary of things like, picking up your phone or any kind of drinking or driving or things like that. Or speed or whatever.
Any of it. And I think that's what's really important to take away from this is if you want a behavior to change, your kids' driving habits, your customers' interaction with a return policy, then you have to change the mental models. You have to look at the mental models, build new mental models that they can act on.
Yes, right? Because mental models drive behavior.
Yes.
Period.
Right.
And they drive it at the individual level and at the organizational level.
Yeah.
So if you see patterns of behavior across your organization that you like or dislike, they're being driven by mental models, by percentages of mental models held by people. Right? So if the boat is going roughly in that direction, but it's veering off that way, there's a mental model causing that.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Who knew we would be able to make such parallels between two so different well, we knew that.
Yes.
Because it's all about the structure.
Because it's about the structure. It's all about the O.
That's awesome. I'm hoping
the O is the critical variable that we miss because it's invisible.
I'm hoping this helps people start to see that thinking things through is getting underneath the surface, the informational content, and trying to really think about the difference in the way people are building the mental models about the thing itself.
Yeah, thinking things through really isn't about the information as much as it is about the organization. The way we organize information is what makes meaning or mental models.
Right.
And so becoming well-versed in that organizational stuff that's the whole ballgame.
Yeah.
To thinking things through. Yeah. And having those skills, those skills will give you the ability to do things that other people can't do.
In your professional and your personal life.
Totally, 100%. That's a wrap.